السلام عليكم طالباتنا وطلابنا الأعزاء. Today I am going to finish the grammatical point or all the points of grammar regarding unit number 3. I will also talk about making a question tag, and at the same time we are going to give you some information about how to make your opinion stronger. So point number 1, we will finish all the past tenses regarding past perfect. Number 2, how to make an opinion stronger. Number 3, how to make a question tag. Let's begin with number 1, which is the end of the past tenses which are found and discussed in unit number 3. We talked about the past simple tense, then we talked about the past continuous, and now we will talk about the past perfect. Now the past perfect. Now when we say past perfect, please take into consideration that we talk about a complete action, we talk about an action which is finished, which is complete, which is perfect. Therefore, but in the past, we talk about something in the past. Now, so this is the meaning of past perfect. It is an action, it is a verb, which is complete and perfect, was complete and perfect in the past. Now, the uses of the present perfect. Sorry, of the past perfect. Now, before talking about the uses of the past perfect, I will only give the form and the shape of the past perfect. The past perfect is made up of had plus past participle of the verb, which means the verb in the third declension. Now this is the form of the past perfect. It is had plus the past participle of the verb for all persons. Yeah, which means for I, we say I had. For we say we had. For you, we say second person you had. We talk about they had, he had, she had, it had, and so on. Now it can be used in the contracted form, I'd, which means I had, or can be written as I had. Now the negative of I had is not. So we talk about I hadn't. I hadn't. Now we hadn't, they hadn't, and so on. So this is in the affirmative, or this is in the negative. Now this is about the form. It can be used again, had plus past participle for all the persons. First person I, we, second person you, for they, with third person they, and she, and he, and it. All of them take the same form, had a plus past participle. Now what is the uses? What are the uses of the past perfect? Now, we use the past perfect, number 1, to make it clear that one action happened before another. Again, now we use the past perfect to make it clear that one action happened before another action. Example, when I went back home, so this is the action. I went back home. I found out that this is the action which happened before going and finding. I found out that my house was broken into, and that my money was stolen. Okay, again. When I went back home, I found out that my house, now the sentence alone, my house was broken into, my money was stolen, are in the past simple tense but in the passive. Now, to show that these actions, breaking into the house and stealing the money, happened before going back, now this tense must be in the past perfect. So we say my house had been broken into and that my money had been stolen. Now these two actions, which are breaking into the house and stealing the money, were put in the past perfect. Why? Because the action of getting into the house and stealing the money happened before going home. Happened before going home. So the sentence is said, when I went back home, I found out that my house had been broken into and that my money had been stolen. These two tenses are put in the past perfect, had plus past participle, but because the sentences are passive, we put been after had and before the past participle. This is the first use of the past perfect. The second use now, at the time we use the past simple tense. At the time we use the past simple tense to show actions in a chronological order, yani actions that are arranged in sequence, one after the other according to time. For example, we say, when we were at school, I knew a beautiful girl. We spent 3 years together. Then we got married. Look at these actions. Now, being at school, then knowing a girl, then spending 3 years, then getting married. Now, these actions happened in a chronological order, yani one after the other. Therefore, now all of these which were used in the past simple tense, now the past simple tense that tells us that these actions occurred in a chronological order. But now when we talk about the past, now we use the past simple tense to tell us about this chronological order. But when we talk about the past perfect, we talk about an action that happened before another action. So we say, when I saw the thief, I knew that he had got into my house. Look here now. Seeing the thief now, then the thief had got into my house. This is in the past simple tense to show that getting into the house was a prayer in arrangement, or prayer in time to seeing the thief, which means that the thief maybe was caught by the police, and then I knew that before that he had got into my house. And this is the second use of the past perfect. At the time, the present simple tense tells us about a chronological order of actions in the past. Now we find that the past perfect describes to us the actions which happened in different order. Therefore now, we can compare between sentences and the different meaning of sentences like this. Number one, when I went to the party, Peter went home. The second sentence, when I arrived into the party, Peter had gone home. Now, these two sentences appear to be in the past. Oh, actually, they are both in the past. They mean that I went to the party, Peter went home. Both actions, going to the party was in the past, Peter's going home was also in the past. When the second sentence, when I arrived into the party, which means when I reached the party, Peter had gone home. Peter also is in the past. Going home for Peter was in the past. But these two sentences are different in meaning. Look here now. When we talk about number one, it means when I went to the party, and when I arrived into the party, now Peter at that moment went home. So it might mean that I saw Peter, but while going home. The second sentence, when I arrived into the party, and when I reached the party, now Peter had gone home. It means that Peter went home before my arrival. So going home, Peter's going home was a prayer to what? To my arrival in the party. So when I arrived, I did not see Peter. Why? Because he had gone home. Because before that moment, it was a different time from this time that Peter had gone home. So this is the difference. In the first sentence means that when I arrived, Peter went home, so I saw Peter. The second means when I arrived, Peter had gone home before my arrival, so I didn't see him. So this is the difference between the past simple tense and between the past perfect. So when we use the past perfect, we must take into consideration, first of all, we must pay attention to that when we talk about the past simple tense. There is a chronological order, order of time actions. The actions happened one after the other in an ordered time. But when we talk about the past perfect, there is a difference in time between the two sentences. So arriving at the party was at a given moment in the past, and going home was maybe long before that. Now, talking about the past perfect might lead us to talk about past perfect continuous. Past perfect continuous, just from one point. We mean by it is the past perfect, which is made of had, then been, this is the past perfect, and then continuous, the verb ing. Like, for example, she had been washing the dishes before I arrived in the kitchen. Look at this sentence now. Now, these two sentences also mean that she had been washing, that washing the dishes was at a different point of time in the past from my arrival. Like the sentence with the past perfect tense. Now, they are at two different times, one in the past, in the very past, within the second after it, in the past simple tense. Now, but the only difference between the past perfect and the past perfect continuous is that we are interested in the duration of time, in the continuity of time, in the progress of the action, that the time washing the dishes was taking place in the past long before I arrived in the kitchen. Therefore now, when we talk about the past perfect continuous, we are much interested in the duration of time, the time during the period of the past perfect, and then after that having the past simple as in the sentence of the past perfect. Okay, these are the three tenses. These are the tenses which are related to the past simple tense in Unit 3. We talked about the simple past. We talked about the past continuous. We talked about the past perfect. And now we have talked about the past perfect continuous, in addition to talking about the habitual past of use to. By this now, in Unit 3, we have finished all the past tenses which are decided to be discussed in it. Now we will move to point number 2, which is how to make your opinion stronger. We say the weather is awful, which means it's very hot, maybe stormy and sandy and so on. Now this is now the weather is awful is a normal sentence, an ordinary sentence, where it doesn't appear anything except your opinion of the adjective awful. Now these adjectives and also verbs, which means verbs and adjectives, both can be qualified. We can qualify them with adverbs. With adverbs. You know that adjectives qualify nouns, they add information to the noun, but adverbs add information to verbs and adjectives. So this sentence, which is the weather is awful, can be spoken in a different way, and we can say the weather is absolutely awful. Now, the weather is absolutely awful, which means that in my opinion that the weather is extremely awful. It's absolutely awful, okay? So we use the adverb absolutely before the adjective awful in order to strengthen my opinion, to make my opinion strength. It's very strong or stronger. Another example. It is fine today. It is fine today. We can say it is fantastically fine today. It is fantastically fine today, which means it is very fine today. We like it today. Now, so the adverb fantastically now it qualifies the adjective fine. A third example. she is strong. I say to you, she is strong. No, you say, strong? Just strong? No. She is extremely strong. She is terribly strong. She is terribly strong. So we qualify the adjective strong with the adverb terribly in order what? In order to strengthen my opinion or to make my opinion stronger. So therefore now you can make your opinion stronger by adding adverbs before the adjectives, which should be qualified. Now, point number three, a question tag. What do you mean by question tag? Now, she speaks like a queen. Now this is a sentence. Now we can make a question tag for it, which means that we can add a question at the end of the word, like for example, speaks now here now does not, this sentence does not have an auxiliary but ends with s, so we can take does. We can take does from it, and we change the sentence which is positive into negative. So we say doesn't, and we take the pronoun as the subject. So doesn't she? She speaks like a queen. Doesn't she? They play like soldiers. Question tag. Don't they? Don't they? Don't they? So now we put a question tag at the end of the sentence. Take into consideration that if the sentence is positive, affirmative, now this auxiliary must be negative, then followed by the subject pronoun. A third question. He is like a tiger. You see, isn't he? Isn't he? Now this process now is called making a question tag. Now you have a sentence. If the sentence has an auxiliary, you use the auxiliary but in the negative at the end. You put it at the end of the sentence in its negative form. Or if the sentence is affirmative, we find it in affirmative. We say, for example, the king does not behave responsible. Look here now, we have auxiliary. Sentence is negative, so therefore now we use does without negative, because the sentence was negative. Now it becomes affirmative. We say does he. Bear into consideration that we cannot say does the king. We cannot say is the boy. We cannot say don't they, don't, and we put the subject. The subject must be in its pronoun form. So if in a question of true or false, we say the king does not behave responsible, and we say does the king, this is a wrong answer. It must be does he, and in this form. By this now, we can say that we discussed in this class the end of the past tenses in this unit number 3, the past perfect. And then we talked about how to make your opinion stronger. And number 3, we talked about how to make a question tag. Okay. See you now in unit number 4. in unit number 4, we will discuss new information. Thank you.